When he reaches out after no contact, it can feel like a moment of validation. Maybe you've been wondering if he ever thinks about you, if he regrets losing you, if he finally understands your worth. And then suddenly there he is. A text, a call, some small breadcrumb of attention. For a split second, it might feel like a victory. But let's pause right there, because what's happening isn't a confession of love, and it's not necessarily a sign that he's changed. More often than not, it's a test. This test isn't meant to destroy you. It's not about hurting you or punishing you for pulling away. It's a measure, a way for him to gauge where you stand, how much power he still has, and whether or not you've actually grown from the time apart. People don't just reach out for no reason. Every action comes from an intention, whether it's conscious or subconscious. When a man reaches out after weeks or months of silence, it's not random. He's measuring something. Maybe it's your emotional stability. Maybe it's your self-respect. Maybe it's your availability. He's checking to see if you are still in the same place emotionally as when he left. Think about it. If you are someone who once tolerated inconsistency, who once made excuses for his lack of effort, who once put his needs before your own, and suddenly you've gone silent, that's a shift in the dynamic. That's something he notices. The moment you stop chasing, stop begging for clarity, stop making it easy for him to take up space in your life without effort, something happens in his mind. He starts wondering if he's losing his grip. He starts questioning if he still holds value in your world. And instead of coming back with full accountability and real change, he might just send out a small test. A casual, hey, how have you been? A random meme. I saw something that reminded me of you. Harmless? Maybe. But behind it, there's a question. Are you still emotionally available to me? If you respond with excitement, if you immediately engage, if you pick up right where things left off without any hesitation, you're answering that question with a yes. And what happens when he gets that confirmation? The urgency disappears. The motivation to step up, to prove anything, to take real action, it fades. Because he knows he still has access. But if you have truly grown, if you have truly stepped into a higher level of self-worth, the way you respond, or whether you respond at all, will be completely different. A man's test isn't about words. It's about energy. It's about seeing if you're still the same person who once accepted less than you deserved. It's about checking if you've really moved on or if you're just pretending. And here's the thing. This test isn't a punishment. It's not karma trying to mess with you. It's an opportunity. It's a moment to prove to yourself just how much you've evolved. The growth isn't about saying you've changed. It's about showing it. When that message pops up, you have a choice. You can react from the old version of yourself, the one who needed validation, the one who craved his attention, the one who placed his presence on a pedestal, or you can respond as the new version of yourself, the one who is in control, the one who understands her worth, the one who doesn't need to prove anything to anyone. This is where most people get it wrong. They think the test is about getting him back. They think it's about playing the game correctly so that he suddenly realizes what he lost. But that's the wrong mindset, because the test isn't about him at all. It's about you. It's about how much you've truly stepped into your power. And here's something to think about. If he really wanted to come back, if he really wanted to fix things, he wouldn't test you. He would be clear. He would be direct. He would come back with action, not breadcrumbs. A man who has changed doesn't play games to see if you'll chase him again. He steps up. So when he reaches out, don't take it as a grand romantic gesture. Don't read into it as a sign that he's had some deep realization. See it for what it is. A measure, a checkpoint, a way to see if you're still willing to give him the same space in your life that he once had. And the way you handle that moment will determine everything. Respect is not something you ask for, it's something you command. And the way you command it isn't through words, it's through your actions, your boundaries, and your energy. When he reaches out after no contact, he's not just seeing if you'll respond. He's evaluating whether you're still the same person who once tolerated inconsistency, half-hearted effort, and emotional breadcrumbs. He's testing whether you still hold him in the same position of power you once did. Let's be clear. People respect what they must work for. It's human nature. When something is easily accessible, it loses value. Think about it. Do you truly appreciate things that come effortlessly, or do you value the things that require effort, investment, and consistency? It's the same in relationships. If a man knows that all he has to do is send a simple message after weeks or months of silence, and you'll instantly be there, ready to engage, ready to pick up where things left off, what does that tell him? It tells him that no matter what happens, no matter how he treats you, no matter how much time has passed, you're still available. And if you're still available without him having to earn it, where is the challenge? Where is the reason for him to level up? Strong people, men or women, do not respect what comes too easily. They respect what they have to work for. They respect what they fear losing. And if you make it clear that your presence is not something to be taken for granted, that access to you is a privilege, not a guarantee, that's when respect is established. A man will test you after no contact to see if you've learned this lesson. When he reaches out, it's often not with deep remorse or a genuine commitment to making things right. It's with a probe, an attempt to see if you are still emotionally available. He might not even be consciously aware of it, but subconsciously, he's assessing the situation. The way you handle that moment determines everything. If you immediately respond with excitement, if you drop everything to engage, if you let him back in without any effort on his part, you send a clear message. You don't have to work for me. I'm still here waiting for you. But if you respond from a place of strength, if you take your time, if you don't prioritize him over your own life, if you show that you are no longer operating from a place of neediness, but from a place of self-respect, the entire dynamic shifts. And that's when respect begins to grow. Respect isn't built through chasing. It's built through self-discipline, through the ability to hold your own ground even when emotions try to pull you in a different direction, through the decision to value yourself so highly that you refuse to entertain anything less than what you deserve. Look at the world around you. The people who are respected the most are not the ones who seek approval, who bend to everyone's expectations, who are constantly available and eager to please. The most respected people are the ones who stand firm, who know their worth, who do not waver just because someone suddenly decides to show interest again. A man respects a woman who respects herself. If he can sense that you still crave his attention, that you're still emotionally tied to him, that he can waltz back in with minimal effort and get the same energy from you as before, then why would he change? Why would he put in any more effort than he did before? But if he senses that you have evolved, that you have detached from the emotional grip he once had on you, that you are no longer seeking validation from him, that's when he starts paying attention. That's when he realizes that you are no longer someone he can take lightly. Men do not respect desperation, they respect certainty. They respect women who hold themselves to a higher standard, who do not just talk about self-worth, but embody it in every action they take. And make no mistake, strength doesn't mean playing games. It doesn't mean ignoring him just to appear unavailable. It doesn't mean being cold or cruel. Strength is about knowing that your value is not determined by whether or not he comes back. Strength is about knowing that you are already whole. And when you move from that place, when you operate from true self-assurance instead of seeking external validation, everything changes. Emotional resilience is what separates those who stay stuck in unhealthy patterns from those who rise above them. It's the ability to control your emotions instead of letting them control you. It's the difference between reacting impulsively to a situation and responding with intention. And when he reaches out after no contact, emotional resilience is exactly what will determine whether you fall back into old cycles or maintain the power you've worked so hard to reclaim. A man doesn't just test you to see if you'll respond. He's testing to see if you're still emotionally invested in him the same way you were before. If he left and you were in a place of neediness, attachment, or insecurity, he wants to know if that's still the case. He wants to know if you're still emotionally available to him without him having to put in real effort. But here's the thing, desperation repels, confidence attracts. When you respond from a place of emotional desperation, it's obvious. Even if you try to act nonchalant, the energy behind your words betrays you. You over-explain. You ask too many questions. You seek validation. You're eager to prove something, whether it's that you've changed, that you're doing great, or that you're unaffected by his return. But the moment you feel the need to prove something, you've already lost control of the situation. True emotional resilience means you don't need to prove anything. A man respects a woman who is centered, grounded, and secure in herself. He notices when she doesn't get thrown off balance by his sudden reappearance, when she doesn't react impulsively, when she doesn't rush to engage, when she doesn't abandon her own emotional stability just because he's testing the waters again. This isn't about playing hard to get. It's about actually being hard to get, because you've built yourself up to a place where you no longer need external validation. When you're emotionally resilient, you don't crumble at the first sign of attention. You don't let an unexpected text dictate your mood for the day. You don't let old feelings cloud your judgment. Think about how much effort you've put into moving forward. Maybe you've spent time healing, working on yourself, rediscovering your passions, and building a life that doesn't revolve around him. That growth wasn't easy. It took discipline. It took time. And the moment he comes back, you are faced with a choice. Do you honor the progress you've made, or do you let your emotions pull you back into the past? Most people fail this test because they don't understand one thing. Emotions are temporary, but the decisions you make in those emotional moments can have lasting consequences. If you react impulsively, if you let old emotions dictate your actions, you risk undoing all the work you've done. You risk stepping back into a dynamic that didn't serve you before, all because in the heat of the moment, it felt good to receive attention. But emotional resilience means recognizing that just because something feels good doesn't mean it's right. It means pausing before you react. It means asking yourself, am I responding from a place of strength or from a place of old wounds? A man knows when a woman is emotionally in control. He can feel the difference between someone who is responding from confidence versus someone who is responding from insecurity. And the truth is, if he senses that you are still emotionally affected by him, that he can still trigger the same reactions, he won't feel the need to step up. But if he senses that you are truly independent, that your emotions are no longer dictated by his presence or absence, that's when he starts to view you differently. That's when he realizes that he doesn't hold the same power over you anymore. And that shift in power is everything. Because when you are emotionally resilient, You make decisions based on logic, self-respect, and long-term value, not just fleeting emotions. You understand that your worth is not dependent on whether or not he comes back. You know that your peace is your responsibility and no one else's. Emotional resilience is what allows you to stay grounded even when tested. It's what allows you to remain in control of your energy, your boundaries, and your future. It's what ensures that no matter who reaches out, who returns, or who exits your life, you remain unwavering in your self-worth. When he reaches out after no contact, it's not because he suddenly woke up and realized he made a mistake. It's not because he spent every waking moment regretting his choices. More often than not, it's because he senses something has changed. And that something is you. See, energy doesn't lie. When you were in a place of attachment, when you were waiting on his validation, when you were constantly replaying every conversation and wondering what you could have done differently, he felt that energy. Even if you weren't directly reaching out, even if you weren't showing it externally, he knew on some level that you were still emotionally available to him. But the moment you truly start growing, something shifts. When you stop obsessing over what went wrong, when you stop wondering if he's thinking about you, when you stop needing closure and instead focus on you, that's when the balance of power changes. Because suddenly, your energy is no longer feeding him. Suddenly, you're not giving him that silent emotional validation that he still has a place in your mind. And whether he realizes it consciously or not, he picks up on that shift. That's why so many men reach out right when you've finally started to feel free, right when you've genuinely stopped waiting, right when you've begun to rediscover your confidence, your passions, and your identity outside of him. It's not a coincidence, it's a test. He wants to know, is she really over me? Has she really changed? Or is she just pretending? Because here's what you need to understand. When a man knows that he once had a strong emotional grip on you, it feeds his ego. It reassures him that if he ever wanted to, he could come back and still have access to you. And as long as he believes that, he doesn't feel urgency to change. He doesn't feel the need to level up. But when you grow, truly grow, that's when things shift. That's when he starts feeling something unexpected, uncertainty. He's no longer sure if you still want him. He's no longer sure if he still holds the same place in your heart. And uncertainty is what makes people take action. The most powerful thing you can do in this situation is continue evolving. See, most people get tested at this stage and fail. They take his return as validation. They see his message, his call, his sudden interest, and they think, finally, he realizes my worth. And in that excitement, they revert back to who they used to be. They engage too quickly. They open the door without hesitation. They pour out all their emotions, desperate to finally have the conversation they've been waiting for. And just like that, the power shifts back to him. Because now, he knows he still has access. He knows that his presence alone is enough to shake you. He knows you were only growing because you had to, not because you truly wanted to. Real growth, true transformation, isn't just about moving on when you have no choice. It's about choosing yourself even when you do have the choice to go back. Your greatest power in this situation isn't in proving anything to him. It's in proving it to yourself. Think about the version of you who was waiting on him. The version of you who tolerated the bare minimum. The version of you who ignored red flags because you wanted things to work. That version of you doesn't exist anymore. You have put in the effort. You have healed. You have learned what you truly deserve. That growth is everything. And the real victory isn't in making him regret losing you. It's in making yourself so powerful so self-assured, so deeply fulfilled that his presence or absence no longer defines your worth. When he tests you, he's not just checking to see if you'll respond, he's checking to see if you've really changed. And if you have, he'll know it. He'll feel it. And that, right there, is the ultimate revenge. When he reaches out after no contact, it's not just to see if you'll respond, it's to see if your boundaries have changed. If you were someone who once allowed inconsistency, who forgave too easily, who made space for him no matter how he treated you, then he expects you to still be that person. He assumes that because he had access to you before, he still does. But what he doesn't realize, what you must show him, is that you are no longer operating from that same mindset. Boundaries are what separate those who stay stuck in toxic cycles from those who rise above them. And make no mistake, this is a test. A man tests you not because he consciously wants to manipulate you, but because human nature is built around patterns. If he once had access to you without having to truly earn it, if he once could come and go as he pleased, then he has no reason to believe that anything has changed. So when he reaches out, he's measuring, will she let me back in as easily as before? Will she still make excuses for me? Will she still drop everything just because I've decided to return? And the way you handle that moment tells him everything he needs to know. If you respond immediately, if you allow him back in with no hesitation, if you pretend like nothing ever happened, you send a clear message. My boundaries haven't changed. I still accept the same treatment as before. But if you have truly grown, if you have built real self-respect, then your response or lack of response will reflect that. Boundaries aren't about playing games. They aren't about being cold or distant for the sake of appearing strong. Boundaries are about self-protection. They are about setting a standard for how you allow others to treat you. Not based on what they want, but based on what you deserve. Think about who you were before no contact. Did you overextend yourself for someone who gave you the bare minimum? Did you tolerate behavior that made you question your worth? Did you allow yourself to be kept on standby, waiting for clarity, waiting for effort, waiting for something more? If the answer is yes, then this is the moment where you break that pattern. The version of you that allowed inconsistency is gone. The version of you that puts someone else's needs above your own is gone. And the only way to prove that to yourself and to him is through your boundaries. A boundary is not just something you set in your mind, it is something you enforce with your actions. If you say you will no longer tolerate breadcrumbs, but then accept them the moment they appear, you're not actually setting a boundary. You're giving a warning, one that you are not following through on. And a boundary that is not enforced is not a boundary at all. Real boundaries require discipline. They require you to sit with discomfort. They require you to resist the urge to fall back into old habits just because it feels good in the moment. Because let's be honest, when he reaches out, there will be a part of you that wants to engage, that wants to hear him out, that wants to believe that maybe this time is different. And that's where your strength is tested. Do you fall into the trap of old patterns, or do you hold firm? Do you let his return dictate your worth, or do you remind yourself that you've already built something stronger without him? Do you settle for what is easy, or do you demand what you actually deserve? Because here's the truth. A man only respects a woman who respects herself. If you let him come back into your life without boundaries, he knows he doesn't have to change. He knows he can still access you without effort. He knows that despite everything, he still holds power over your emotions. But if you hold your boundaries, if you make it clear that access to you is no longer guaranteed, that your energy is no longer available to him unless he meets your standards, then he realizes something far more powerful. You have changed. You are no longer the woman he once knew. And that is what forces him to either step up or step aside. This isn't just about him. This is about you, about proving to yourself that you have evolved, that you no longer accept the things you once tolerated, that you no longer need validation from someone who once made you doubt your worth. And the way you enforce your boundaries will determine everything. When he reaches out after no contact, every instinct inside you might scream to respond, to say something, to ask why, to get an explanation, to finally have the conversation that never happened. But what if I told you that the most powerful thing you can do is say nothing at all? See, silence isn't passive, it's a statement. It's a form of communication that is louder than any words you could say. And when a man tests you after no contact, your silence sends the strongest message of all. I am no longer available to you in the same way I once was. Most people misunderstand silence. They think it means weakness, that it's avoiding confrontation, that it's running from closure. But real silence, the kind that comes from a place of strength, is the exact opposite. It is the ultimate power move, because silence shows that you are no longer emotionally controlled by his presence. It tells him without a single word that you are no longer waiting, that his return does not shake you, that his sudden interest does not make you forget everything you've learned, everything you've built, everything you've grown into since he left. And that is what truly unnerves him. When you were emotionally tied to him, you were reactive. If he pulled away, you chased. If he returned, you welcomed him back instantly. If he gave you even a fraction of attention, you held on to it, analyzing every word, every emoji, every response time. But when you choose silence, you break that pattern. You take away his power to pull you back in with minimal effort. You show that you are no longer caught in the push-pull dynamic that once defined your connection. And for a man who is used to a certain level of control over your emotions, that shift is jarring. He might not even realize it, but part of the reason he reached out was to see if he still had that influence, to see if he could get a reaction, to see if you would still engage the way you used to. And when you stay silent, when you don't immediately give him what he expects, he is forced to confront a reality that he wasn't prepared for. You don't need him anymore. That's when the doubt creeps in. Did you meet someone else? Have you moved on completely? Did he misjudge how much you cared? Because when someone reaches out and is met with silence, they start to question everything. They start to feel exactly what you once felt when they ignored you, when they disappeared, when they failed to give you clarity. And now, for the first time, he is the one sitting with uncertainty. Most women make the mistake of thinking they need to say something to make an impact, that they need to craft the perfect response, that they need to prove they're doing better, that they've changed, that they're stronger now. But silence says all of that and more without you lifting a finger. It forces him to feel your absence instead of just hearing about it. And that's a feeling that lingers. See, when you respond, even if it's just to be polite, even if it's just to keep things civil, you're still engaging. You're still giving him a piece of your energy. You're still showing that on some level, he matters enough for you to acknowledge him. But when you remain silent, he doesn't get that reassurance. He is left to sit in the discomfort of the unknown. And that is powerful. Because for once, the uncertainty is not on your side. It's on his. And that's when the real shift happens. That's when he realizes that this time, something is different. That this time, you are no longer playing the game. That this time, he might have actually lost you. And nothing shakes a man more than the realization that he no longer has access to a woman who once gave him everything. Silence is not weakness. It is not avoidance. It is not fear. It is the loudest, most undeniable proof that you have outgrown the version of yourself that once accepted less than what you deserved. And that is a message that needs no words at all.